I want to talk about the different models that, how this can be deployed, if you will, right? So first, defense. It's tiny. I can throw it in my rucksack. What are defenders using this for out there?
So I think when we look at defense, you look at base security.
Yeah.
You look at the aspect, to your point. I have it in my rucksack. Can I stick it on my autonomous dog, and let it go forward and give me information of, is somebody in that forest? Is somebody over here, right? Or you could flip up a bird and fly that bird over that looks like a normal bird. Is anybody going to, think that it's anything different when you see an eagle? Oh, it's a beautiful eagle, right?
Right.
You have no idea that it's got a radar that's giving information back, right? To the standpoint of autonomous vehicles. So it really helps, particularly in that forward deployment situation in the middle of nowhere, to be able to give the communications as well as to be able to share the information back to the team members, or be able to keep the team members safe. Because remember, not only do I have that radar technology, but I also have that network aspect.
Yeah, and the full integration. From a homeland security standpoint, when I say that term, it really fairly embraces our public safety brothers and sisters, right? Because
Yep.
when you think about homeland security, the first boots on the ground are always local law enforcement. They really struggle with funding. I mean, we've seen this on the drone side, people trying to start their own drone programs, but at the price point we're talking about and the mobility of this thing and the flexibility of it, I imagine this could be an amazing asset for local law enforcement as well.
We do too. We believe in even the border security and federal protection, especially in specialized protection requirements and needs, dignitary.
Oh, like VIP kind of?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yep. Yep. So I think, like I said, it's a tool to augment, and people get very concerned about the fear factor of technology and what's it going to do to me and what's it going to hurt? How is it going to displace jobs? And I actually think this is a tool to make our lives simpler and make our lives safer. And so that's what I like to see, is that we are enabling technology, forward-thinking technology, to become our day-to-day, in our day-to-day uses, if you will, to be, help our productivity levels.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about, just as a practical matter, how someone, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's defense, whether it's a critical infrastructure, partner, how do they work with MatrixSpace to have this kind of security system, if you will? In other words, am I purchasing a bunch of different units? We call this software as a service, or a security as a service. So am I hiring you or your team to come out and operate this thing? Or how exactly does it work? Are there different models?
Yeah, there's going to be different models in how we deploy with the end user customer, depending on who that end user customer is.
Right.
We have key partners that will do the maintenance and the support and some of the integration aspects. It really depends on, like I mentioned, who that end user customer is. We are not into a professional services company where we're going to, be, day-to-day involvement and, changing out stuff. I mean, that's where we have some key partners that can handle some of that aspect. What we want to do is support our end user customers in the successful use of the technology. And so we have, like I said, whether it's going to be a software as a service kind of a model, whether it is, just depending on whether it's capital or expense, just really depends on that end user customer.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. And, we talked about sports arenas, essentially. We talked about borders. I imagine your system can have coverage for any range, from small arenas all the way to an entire country's border.
So it really depends on how the customer wants to be able to utilize our system. But yes, they can start to put an overlay out, and we would support all that overlay and that infrastructure, like I said, with some of our key partners. and one thing I think, Dawn, that we want to be clear on is that MatrixSpace and Greg Waters, our CEO, is very, very key on customer service and customer support. And so we want to be focused around our customers and easy to do business with. I really do want to point that out. But to the answer to your question is, yes, you could start to look at laying this out in country borders. In cases where customers need longer lengths,
Right.
this array does not just stay in that form factor that I shared with you. It will continue to evolve and grow depending on what some of our end user requirements are. Then it can add to the different phased array, but still consider the smaller form factor. So it will always have that same ratio in size and that same ratio in price.